My name is Barry Heidowitz. I'm a director here at Extreme Labs. Today we have Professor Robert McMillen presenting on neurodiverse IT training. A few things I want to start out with. I want to share some information about Extreme Labs. So where you can find information on Extreme Labs content and labs is on our marketplace. So I'll paste the link in the chat. Um, and then for information on other MCT webinars, including Robert's, so you can access this site, and this is where we will be posting a recording of this along with other webinars that we've also posted. Some other information that I want to share. We have a webinar next week on why live training still wins, and it's accelerating adoption in the age of AI co-pilots. So I'll post the site with information on that. There we go. Otherwise, one other thing here, provide some background information about Robert. So, wow, a lot of people joining. Let's go. So this presentation will explore transformative potential of neurodiverse IT training. So there's a high percentage of neurodiversity in IT work compared to other careers for several reasons. IT work attracts neurodiverse individuals because it often aligns with their cognitive strengths while offering structured environments and flexible communication norms that reduce social friction. And then let me pull up something else here. Lost the other page. So Professor Robert McMillen is a professor and networking consultant with over 50 technical certifications. He has an MBA and teaches Windows Server Administration and cybersecurity at Portland-based colleges. Oops. So the way Robert has earned his MCT from Microsoft, he's a Microsoft certified trainer and the founder of NW Tech Support LLC, which is a Portland-based network consulting company. Robert has over 20 years of experience in network engineering and earned certifications from companies like Microsoft, Checkpoint, IBM, and Cisco. Some of his higher profile jobs have been restoring email for the government to prosecute Enron executives, training the network vulnerability assessment team for the U.S. Army, and performing wireless security auditing for the state of Washington. So with that, I'll hand it over to Robert. But one other thing, so you can post questions in the chat, or there's also a Q&A section on Teams that you can click on and post questions there. And then Robert will address them when he gets a chance at certain points throughout the webinar. So thank you, Robert. I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks very much, Barry. I'm really glad to be here today, and I really appreciate that intro. As Barry mentioned, my name is Robert McMillen, and I do teach college in the Portland, Oregon area, and as Barry also mentioned, I have multiple small businesses. So, I started my first small business back in 2001, after the .bomb happened, where everybody got laid off. I remember everybody on my street was all laid off from IT, and so we were every day, trying to figure out what we're going to do next. And they all decided to go back to work as soon as the recession was over. But I decided, you know what, I'm going to start my own business, and that was the first IT business I started. And I've started multiple companies, sold some, started new ones. And I really enjoy being in the IT business. And today I want to talk about something, sort of take a break from artificial intelligence just for a couple of minutes, because it seems to be all we're talking about. And what I've noticed in my teaching is that a lot of my students have neurodiversity. And so I wanted to sort of start out by showing you just a quick 2-minute video on what it's like for someone with autism to go to school, because a lot of our students that we have are neurotypical, but there's a seemingly high percentage of neurodiversity in the IT space, in DevOps, in programming, and there's a lot of different theories as to why that is, and we need to understand a little bit better how their minds think so we can properly educate them in the best way possible. So take a look at this. It's just a couple of minutes long, and it'll really help you understand, how it feels to go to school with neurodiversity. You can see the students putting on the mask to mask their autism, which is very common.
Maria, will you pay attention? Are you okay? It's all right. You don't have to explain anything if you don't want to. I'll just leave you to carry on with your painting, okay? You can listen to some music if you want. It'll help.
And this is a great example of an educator finding an alternative way to educate someone who's being overwhelmed by their environment. And it's just a great example of how a neurodiverse person can experience certain things. And what I'd like to do is to give you a little bit of homework for this presentation. I'd like you to think of neurodiverse student stories that you could share in a later slide. If you've been teaching for a while, as I have, you've probably seen many different types of neurodiverse behavior. Where I've seen some instructors and professors, try to punish these behaviors, but they may not be something our students can control. So you may also see some students who have different types of neurodiverse behavior because everybody's a little bit different. So you have to take each student case by case to find what works for them. So don't forget to ask students what they find helpful to them. Not all students will go through disability services, for example, because it may set them apart once again, make them feel uncomfortable or embarrassed. So I'd love to hear, some of your stories. And if any of you are neurodiverse, I would like to, hear about your experiences as well. So what is neurodiversity? So it is a natural variation in human thinking. That's just the sort of the definition of what we're talking about. And there's multiple different types. Of course, such as autism, you may have had at least one in every class, and every autist will act differently. I have a son who is autistic, and he's different from every other autist that was in his classes when he was going through junior high and high school and things like that. ADHD is another type of neurodiversity, and we can't really put these in a box because sometimes people with autism also have ADHD. They also have some of these other things. So a lot of times you're going to see people with various different levels of some of these other neurodiversity traits. So ADHD is an inability to sit still and focus, and that can be a real problem, especially in an on-campus type of class or in high school. It may help to give them a fidget or a certain kind of chair that may allow them to relax a bit. You may also choose to ignore any phone usage as they may need it for a distraction as well. I don't know if you've seen some news recently, but doctors are now prescribing for certain neurodiverse students the ability to use their phone in class. So the prescription, so the teachers now have to allow phones for certain neurodiversity types of students to be able to distract them so they can focus on what's going on. And this can obviously bring up some other issues as well. Dyslexia is another one, makes it difficult for reading assignments. So you could have videos and demonstrations to help people with dyslexia because you don't have to worry about having reading as being the main issue. Another one is dyspraxia. This is poor coordination. You might find students have an issue with what some might call being clumsy. They're constantly running into walls and other things like that. So for on-campus courses, you may want to watch how you lay out your classroom so they don't have to navigate a whole bunch of difficult types of ways to get to their seat. Something else is dyscalculia, which is a tough one. I had to look this one up. This is difficulty with numbers. This is a real challenge for people who are going to be learning IT. It can cause a lot of problems with neurodiverse students when it comes to programming, IP addressing, things like that. And maybe you thought of some things in your own teaching that might have helped students with this condition. So feel free to post that in the chat. You might have even had a student with Tourette syndrome. This can be very disruptive, as you know, in class. And this one particular issue, I haven't really found a great resolution for other than being online because, in the classroom itself, it could definitely be an issue. And it's also the issue for the person, with that neurodiversity because they're also embarrassed by it as well. And there's other cognitive variations that you may be aware of. So some of the different things that you might see in class to know that you've got a neurodiverse student that maybe has not gone through disability or accessibility services could be stimming. Stimming is something that helps center and ground a neurodiverse student. You might see rocking, hand movements, walking around. I've had several students walk around the back of the classroom. I've actually asked them, hey, I'm perfectly fine with you, walking around to relieve your anxiety. Just make sure you do it in the back of the class. That's perfectly fine. So if I told that student they couldn't do that, then that student probably would have dropped out of the class, and that would have not been the right solution. So one student allowed me to explain what it was, so other students wouldn't feel anxious about it. To have a person walking back and forth in the back of the class, that it's great if they allow you to at least explain it to the other students so that they can safely ignore that information. I had another student's mom who signed up for my class so she could sit next to that neurodiverse student to assist with his issues. And that actually worked quite well. She was not technical in any way, and she failed pretty much every lab, but she didn't care. She was mostly there to support her son, which I thought was really a great thing. Now, the son, because of the fact that he had that support, he ended up getting an A in the class, which is fantastic. Asking many questions unprompted. I think we've all had this student where they've start whenever the professor or the teacher says, "Hey, does anybody have any questions?" and someone with neurodiversity will just raise their hand, just constantly asking questions. They've got 300 questions, and the professor said, "Hey, if you got any questions, go ahead and ask them." I've personally found a great way to solve this issue is just to speak to that person privately and explain that, hey, there's other students who may need to ask questions. So let's just limit your questions to maybe a couple an hour, and then any other questions you might have, let's talk about it after class. And that seems to work pretty well. Blurting out thoughts or a lack of boundaries. Now, this is similar to asking too many questions, but maybe more related to Tourette syndrome or some other neurodiverse condition. And they may also, talk too close or say things that are inappropriate. Having an autistic son, I can tell you that this is a common type of neurodiversity. Something else you might notice is a lack of eye contact. Not all neurodiverse students are outgoing. A lot of them are very shy. So it may be common because they don't want to face someone with authority or just people in general. It's not a lack of respect. So don't force them to look at you. It may be a way, of showing additional actual respect by not looking at you because you are that person of authority. Avoiding group work. Many neurodiverse students don't like working in groups, especially on campus. Now, I asked my son about this, and he had several reasons why. He didn't want to rely on other people, and in small groups, the conversation can be very loud. Now, also, and I had no idea about this. He didn't tell me this until recently. He's 23 years old now. It may be because people don't smell good to him. He has a very overactive sense of smell, and even if they actually smell okay, it's just too strong for them. So he doesn't want to get very close to them. So all the different senses are very heightened to neurodiverse students. You don't know which ones are going to be that way. Some students, it's all of them. Some of them, it's just some of them. But we have to respect, those types of boundaries that they may need. A lot of times they're going to have accommodation requests. You'll get that email from accessibility or disability services, and you might talk to that student privately to say, what can you do to make things better? Because they may not put everything in that email or that request that they really want. And if you have that one-on-one conversation, that might be really helpful to them. You might also notice difficulty getting a thought out to completion. Some neurodiverse students sound like they are stuttering, but they're really not. I've had a doctor explain this as a sticky thought. Their brains are working faster than their mouths can actually get the words out, and it makes getting thoughts out difficult. This may be one of the reasons why some autists and some neurodiverse students are nonverbal. They just can't get the words out because their brains are working too quickly. So the best thing is just to be patient and let them finish with what it is that they're saying. Because the next time they may feel less anxious. The less anxiety they have, then the less that will be an issue for them. So why neurodiversity will matter in IT? Well, neurodivergent professionals can bring exceptional strengths to several different types of roles, such as technical roles. So remember that we are all preparing our students for the workforce, and we can encourage neurodiverse students by reminding them of the end game. The end game is going to be from training to getting that job that satisfies them and can help provide for their lives. A job that utilizes their skills in a way that they can feel that job satisfaction. IT environments can benefit from diverse problem-solving styles. So they don't necessarily just think, inside the box. They can think outside the box a lot more easily, in my experience, than neurotypical students. And many organizations, tend to overlook this talent, this ability to think outside the box, to have critical thinking skills, due to a lot of outdated assumptions. There's been an explosion of knowledge and learning about neurodiversity, and it has made my life as a parent and teacher much better. So I encourage you to take further steps to learn about these students who present in a neurodiverse way. I remember when my student was in preschool and he had this issue of transitioning. So transitioning from one type of play to another type of play, or maybe a learning activity or something like that. And it was the first time we had ever heard of Asperger's, which we don't really use anymore. Is sort of outdated. We now use, on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum. And we can't really put, even though we try, to put autism and some of these neurodiversities into, specific boxes. Like for autism, there's level 1, level 2, level 3. Now there's a level 4. And I looked at all these and I'm like, wow, my son doesn't fit into any of these boxes. Everybody's going to be different. So keep that in mind. Common neurodiverse strengths in IT. They have deep focus and sustained attention. Not everybody, not all of them, but there are students, there are neurodiverse students who do have this. Think of people you know who might be such deep thinkers, where they think so deeply that they can no longer hear other people speaking, even if their phone rings, they don't even hear it. This may be neurodiverse thinking, and it's a great skill to have because of that ability to focus on a specific task. Pattern recognition and analytical thinking is another skill. These students may find patterns that others do not. Now, a really poor example, but it just gives you some context, is if you remember the movie Rain Man, where, you've got Dustin Hoffman, he's being able to win at gambling, because he sees patterns and things that other people don't. This can be very useful, when troubleshooting. Certain neurodiverse students are going to see patterns that other people do not. Creative problem solving. One of the first courses I took in college was critical thinking. It's because we're all thought to think in one single way. But successful people of all types know how to think about more than one way to solve a problem. Neurodiverse students may find ways of solving issues that nobody else has thought of. They have high accuracy and detail orientation. Again, not everyone, but a lot of them do. And this can be good and bad. I've seen with my own son where he overthinks papers he has written for his college courses. He agonizes over them until we step in, my wife and I step in to remind him of what is important, and some ways he can cope with being able to hit that submit button to send in his text. You may also notice that a lot of neurodiverse students get their work flagged by AI detectors as being written by someone with AI. It's just the way that they think and the way that they put words on paper. It sounds a little bit like artificial intelligence sometimes. And a strong memory for technical systems. I know of autists that can spout amazing facts about things they care about. There's, a lot of times autists will talk about their special focus, the thing that they really love. But they also forget to tie their shoes because it may just not seem very important to them. Find out what they care about and look for ways to incorporate them into this type of skill if they possess it. And of course, innovative approaches to architecture and troubleshooting. So as a society, we owe a lot to neurodiverse thinkers and innovators. So we need to really do everything we can to not stifle their creativity so they can positively change our world. And you're going to see a little bit about that coming up. So let's spend the next few minutes on how we can assist our neurodiverse students. Neurodiversity requires multiple options because everyone learns differently. So think for a minute. For example, I teach using videos for most of my courses. I've written books, but I really find more joy and job satisfaction by teaching using videos. Now, do I personally learn best that way? No, I don't. I really learn best by reading. It's hard to say why. I just needed to accept it, as you may just need to accept that you need to present your learning materials in multiple formats. Now, I teach from Ascend courses as an example, and Ascend has the same ownership as Extreme Labs. And I don't just create the videos. What I do that I offer the students is the ability to learn by video, by test, by lab demonstrations, by lectures, by groups, third-party materials like online websites, whenever it's appropriate. So sometimes I'll present additional options for ways of people to learn. They don't have to use them if they don't want to. I try to cover all the bases just in case someone's going to get something out of that where they couldn't get it in the traditional way. So, effective delivery techniques. When teaching, think of these techniques to improve your neurodiverse student retention and success. Starting out with clarity. Be very clear in your lectures and your quizzes and tests. Don't try to fool students. It's not fair and it could lead to failure. So, for instance, I took the MD 102 Intune exam recently for Microsoft. Now, every single question seemed to try to fool you, which was really weird because there was really no reason for it. And so it turned out to be just a very difficult exam. And I thought, wow, if someone with neurodiversity took this exam, I don't know how they would pass it. They came up and said, hey, you're a member of this group and you have this server and you have this other thing. And but a lot of the information has nothing to do with the actual question they're about to ask you. Don't do those kinds of questions. It could lead to failure. Predictability. Always be predictable. If I right now spun around in my chair and talked really loud and then really soft, that would be unpredictable. Don't do that. Try to be predictable at all times, because if not, then you're going to definitely cause issues with neurodiverse students. Obviously, you're sometimes are just trying to get students' attention. I totally understand that, but sometimes it is causing more problems than helping. Be flexible. Flexible in your due dates when necessary. I used to be a teacher where I would say, okay, every week you're going to have to submit a lab and you're going to have to do a quiz and you're going to have to do a discussion. By the way, students hate discussions. Those of you who are teaching college, you especially online, you have to have these discussions. It's one of these things that is state mandated. You got to have them at least one communication between you and the student every week. And boy, do they hate that. But I tell them, hey, this is something the state requires. Otherwise, you cannot get credit. And just by explaining that it really helps a lot. But now, as far as the labs and quizzes go, now I only have 2 due dates. Now, you may not agree with this. It's fine. I totally understand. But I have 2 due dates. I have the midterm. You can get the first half of the labs and quizzes done. And then I have the end of the term. You can get the second half of the labs and quizzes. And that allows, both neurotypical and neurodiverse students to have the ability where if they are overwhelmed with college from other courses, it allows them to say, okay, I can put this aside for a little bit and I can come back a little later without any penalties. And that has been a tremendous boon to my classes, because I used to have anywhere from 15% on to 20% of people drop out of my courses within the first few weeks. And after I switched it to be midterm and end of term, I found that it's gone down to around 5%. And at the end of the term, the students really appreciate it. Nothing was, negative about it. They ended up, wanting to stay in the class, and they were able to stay in the class. So that was super flexible, a great way to do that. Sensory awareness. Be aware of things that may cause distraction in your classroom as well as online. If something doesn't belong, Temple Grandin, who is a famous autist, says that neurodiversity neurodiverse students will be drawn to it and they will no longer hear us. If you're teaching a class on Windows servers or you're teaching a class on networking, routing, programming, whatever it is, don't have things that have nothing to do with that in your classroom sitting in their vision, because they will focus on it and they will not hear a word that you say the rest of the class. Multiple ways to learn. Of course, I've mentioned this earlier. It's worth mentioning again. Provide multiple ways for your students to learn. It's a great success strategy. And multiple ways to demonstrate mastery. Of course, we think of, you got to have a quiz, you got to have, you have to do a report, things like that. Some neurodiverse students can only present results verbally or on paper or by email or, through video. So not only the way you teach should be flexible, but the way you should receive all the different types of work to show the mastery of that subject should also be something that should be flexible. So when creating courses, choose to break content into small, digestible modules. So a new course is as vast as the universe to an ND student. And when I say ND, neurodiverse student, anxiety can happen when they see no end to a subject. So, when they first get to class, as far as they're concerned, there's no end to it. It's just this vast open space. Anxiety can happen when they see no end to a subject. So put up stopping points in digestible amounts rather than large swaths of learning. If you've ever been to, one of my favorite restaurants is the Melting Pot. I don't know if you've ever been to Melting Pot, but you get to cook your own food. First they give you some cheese and you put, some bread in it and some things like that. And then they give you something to cook the meat in, and then finally chocolate. You got to end up with a big pot of chocolate. Well, when you first see this food that they bring out, it's this little tray of food, and you're like, well, I'm never going to get filled up on that little tray of food. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to ask for more food. And then you start cooking the food and you start eating the food, and it's all just in these, bite-sized, portions. At the end of 90 minutes, every time I go there, I'm too full to stand up. I barely can get up to get back to my car. So we want all our students to be so full of knowledge they can barely contain it. But we need to do it one bite at a time, just like my favorite restaurant, and maybe some of yours as well. Use consistent layouts and predictable flow. So don't show big flashy colors or slides that don't match, or learning materials that may attract neurotypical students, but just distract neurodiverse students. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Provide agendas and timelines up front. Show that calendar every week during class, constantly remind them of the calendar. If you're making an online course, like I many times do, you can also present your course in easily obtained modules or chapters for the same effect. Try not to have one module be super long and other modules be very short. It makes it very difficult for neurodiverse students to pace themselves. Offer written, visual, and audio formats, just as I previously mentioned. Try to invent new formats. Now, for instance, I was writing a book on Windows security. This is a few years ago. And in that book, I thought, what can I do that's different than just a plain old book? I also made a lot of videos. How do I incorporate that when people have a physical book in their hands? I thought about it. I did not even ask AI because AI wasn't as big a thing a few years ago. And eventually I came up with an idea. What I did was I created QR codes in the book. So if anybody's reading the book and they're going, wow, I just don't understand it. They could take a picture of their phone of the QR code, and it pops up a video, and the video explains in a slightly different format than reading the exact same subject that I just wrote about. So readers could get out their phones at the end of a section or a chapter and watch those related videos, and it helps solidify and add some context to what they were learning. And it turned out to be very successful. I was very happy with that way of teaching. And include checkpoints and summaries. We've talked about having stopping points, but summaries are also a good idea. There's a thing called executive function. You may have heard of this before. It's in our brains to remind us to eat, brush our teeth, study, be on time. So think of all the things that you did before you joined this meeting today. You got out of bed and you brushed your teeth, you had breakfast, you did all these different things. Many neurodiverse people don't have executive function, or they have a diminished version of it. Now, it can be very frustrating to the neurodiverse person as well as their families. So I've learned through many different trials and errors that the best thing to do for executive function is to learn through repetition. Repetition is great. So, for instance, I would send my son up to go brush his teeth just before he'd go to bed. By the time he got up to the top of the stairs, he forgot why he was going, up there in the first place. He'd start playing a video game. 10 minutes later, I'd say, "Hey, did you brush your teeth?" And he'd be like, "Oh, I kind of forgot about that." And so that's executive function. Repetition is one way that you can build that executive function into that neurodiverse person. So with enough repetition, now he does all these things on his own. I'm happy to say that there was a time, although we thought, he wasn't going to graduate high school, he did graduate high school. He's just about to graduate community college, and he's about to go to the University of Hawaii. He just got accepted to University of Hawaii for his undergraduate degree. So with enough repetition, we can get those, executive functions, working once again. So more ways to help. Using clear, literal language. Literal language means using words exactly, as their dictionary definitions. Saying precisely what you mean without exaggerating or hidden meaning. Provide examples of expected output. So examples from your own experiences go a long way to giving context and understanding to all types of students. I like to give stories out when I talk to my students, not just for neurodiverse students, but neurotypical students. Sometimes, when my students, I notice they're looking at their phone instead of, listening to me. What I've done is I've told a story about how, for instance, Barry mentioned that I restored the Enron emails, a long time ago, back in 2001. And so sometimes when I'm talking about email security, I'll bring up that story and I'll tell exactly what happened. And it gives context. It makes the students want to listen. Sometimes their mouths just drop open as they're listening. They're like, wow, I had no idea, that those kinds of things happened. And so if you've got experience in the field that you're teaching, tell as many stories as you can to add that context. So allow extra processing time. You may already be told to do this, but giving more time to understand questions, think through answers, complete tasks, often due to learning disabilities or slower processing speeds, things like that, we may need to allow extra processing time, such as giving that extra time for taking tests and quizzes and things like that. Asynchronous participation is interesting. So that's where you engage with content students engage with content and collaborate on their own schedules at their own pace without needing to be present at the same time as others. So if a student can't finish something in an on-campus or in-class type of thing, give them the opportunity to finish it outside of class. Give them some pointers and other things to help them with that. Avoid unnecessary jargon or metaphors. Now, when I remember new hire training at the college where I teach, and new hire training started out with two younger trainers. There's a room of about 50 or 60 of us, and the two trainers got up and they said, "Hey, let me tell you all about our college." And every other word was an acronym. And none of us knew these acronyms. We were all new hires. We didn't know what they meant. And so, but the funny thing is we were all too afraid to ask what they meant. Not one single person raised their hand and said, "What did you mean by all these acronyms?" Fortunately, after a few hours of teaching by these two younger trainers, someone who was more seasoned got up and said, "Let me explain what all those acronyms just meant." And of course, that made things go a lot smoother the rest of the day. Encourage students without judgment. There are no stupid questions, right? So make sure that you do those encouraging types of words when you're speaking to your neurodiverse students. So sensory-friendly training is important. Minimize visual clutter. Whether it's in a PowerPoint slide like this one or clutter in the room, don't cause student distractions. Avoid flashy animations or loud audio. This can be due to lots of different types of sensitivities. So when you walk into a room, this is something that neurotypical people never really think of. When you walk into a room, you notice the desk, the chair, the board, the speaker. You notice each one of these things one at a time. But just as you saw in the video, when a neurodiverse student walks into the room, they see everything all at once. They hear everything all at once. They don't pick out specific voices. They see and hear everything all at once. Not all of them do this, but a lot of them do. And it is overwhelming. Keep that in mind. Provide dark, low, or low stim versions of materials. So if you don't already offer them, choose dark mode material options. I think everyone actually might appreciate that, especially in morning classes. You don't need anything super bright and flashy. Now, for online students, you're going to allow learners to, control volume and speed and notifications. So videos give a great opportunity for this. And if you can, this isn't always possible, offer quiet breakout spaces or asynchronous alternatives. So that can really, help all different types of students as well. So supporting that executive function I talked about earlier, provide checklists and step-by-step guides. Checklists can be very effective for low executive functioning students. And it provides a beginning, a middle, and an end to a section of the class. Use visual progress indicators. One thing you can do is think of a gas gauge. So you got a gas gauge, it's all the way at full or it's all the way at empty or somewhere in between. If you have that kind of ability, there's certainly programs you can add this to it, where you can show progress like a gauge, something visual. You're halfway there. Oh, you're 80% there, or you made it all the way. That really can help neurodiverse students understand how they're doing. Breaking large tasks into smaller milestones, of course, something I covered before, and offer constant reminders and optional pacing tools, offering these other ways of learning. Welcome page announcements, calendar invites, whatever shows increased success with students. And it's not going to be the same for every class. Sometimes calendar invites is what does it. Sometimes, it's the welcome page that they see every time that they log in that helps out. So these different ways that I'm suggesting to help neurodiverse students in learning aren't going to be the same for everyone, which is why you need to offer lots of different options. Provide templates for lab scripts and documentation. By having a template, you allow different students, both ND and NT, neurotypical and neurodiverse students, the ability to not have to stare at a blank page with high anxiety. So, for instance, those discussions I was talking about earlier, students hate them, but they have to do them in online classes. So what I do is I provided an exact template that they can follow. So now all they have to do is fill in the information they're going to fill in by using the template. They're not staring at a blank page anymore. They have a template to work from, and it really helps. Allow multiple ways for students to demonstrate their skills. They've got written options. You've got recorded explanations, screenshots or screen recordings, or even live demos. So after presenting a portion of a lecture, I switch over to a demonstration to help solidify the understanding, add that context, especially in a tech class. I also tell lots of stories, as I mentioned before. That gives context as well. Avoid timed assessments unless you have to. I mean, in certain cases, you're going to have to do a timed assessment. But for neurodiverse students, you might open that up or even turn off the timing for everybody, just so nobody feels like they're being cheated or anything like that. Provide rubrics with clear expectation. A rubric, in case you don't know, it's a type of scoring guide that assesses and articulates specific components and expectations for an assignment. Rubrics can help all students understand the value of a type of work that they're going to provide you. All right, it's your time to shine. Do you have any stories? You can go ahead. Do we have questions, things like that, Barry, that people have posted or stories that they wanted to mention?
Not seeing any stories or questions. There was a question that I think maybe you addressed, so the person deleted it, but they were asking about hands-on activities and how that comes into play, like more interactive. And I think you already addressed it. So.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Yeah. Beyond that,
Great.
now's the time. Anybody in the audience, if you want to ask any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat or the Q&A section, and
Absolutely.
Robert will address them. So.
Absolutely. While you're doing that, let's just go over some technical inventions from neurodiverse people, just to get an idea of what kind of success that they can have. You may have heard of Alan Turing. He broke the Enigma code in World War II, created one of the first types of computer systems as well. Then we have Nikola Tesla, the AC electrical system. Before that, we had Edison wanting everybody to have DC power, which meant that you're going to have a recharging system on every block. Well, Nikola Tesla came up with AC, which allows you to have the power distribution from very far away. Also someone who was neurodiverse. Temple Grandin, as I mentioned, very much into livestock engineering, but also, as a speaker about autism. Richard Branson, maybe didn't realize this, but also neurodiverse, had commercial space flight. And then you may have heard of these guys, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Albert Einstein, all neurodiverse people that have changed the world. So, very important to understand what neurodiverse students, what they might be capable of. They might be capable of just changing our entire world. And you might be the one to help encourage that. So why neurodiversity succeeds? You've got, pattern recognition and system thinking. Certain jobs require these types of skills. Hyper focus on complex problems, as I mentioned before. Creative, unconventional approaches to engineering challenges. Maybe you found an unconventional approach to something at work or teaching, and it changed the way you approached a situation. Persistence in solving long-term technical issues. Many neurodiverse students will be labeled as rigid, but when they see a way to resolve an issue, they're going to grab onto that way of resolving it in a way that could be very beneficial. However, that rigidity can also lead to bad habits as well, so proper steering by you as the instructor may be required. So these traits often lead to breakthroughs in computing, physics, engineering, and emerging technologies. So you need to build their confidence in these IT skills. Celebrate their progress, not just perfection. Progress should also be celebrated. Normalize mistakes as part of their learning, and provide private feedback options. Neurodiverse students do not like to be, put out when you talk about them in front of a group of people. They like private feedback. They already feel like everybody's already staring at them, and they do not appreciate that. Encourage self-paced mastery. Sometimes you can give students projects to do on their own time that will exceed your expectations. They don't always want to be in the shadows. For instance, my son's biology teacher offered him the option to teach a class on global warming. He was really nervous. He had never done this before, but it allowed him to decide how and for how long he would speak. He didn't give him any guardrails on what he was going to do. And it went better than anybody's expectations. And he was given the opportunity to do it again, and he loved it. Highlight strengths and unique problem-solving approaches. So if someone shows critical thinking, even if the result is incorrect, feel free to say the result may be wrong, but the approach is extraordinary, and focus on that instead. So one thing you may not have realized, but you were all guinea pigs in this course, in this meeting. So what I did was I developed this entire meeting, the slides, the way I spoke, everything in a way that was neurodiverse friendly. There were no bold colors or fonts. There was no outrageous pictures or videos. Everything was homogeneous, the way it looked and the way it felt with each slides. Except for that beginning video, I didn't hear any sounds. There were no walls of text. When you have a slide, you don't want to have a wall of text that will just turn everybody off. And there were clear points of discussion. And finally, I repeated myself multiple times because that is what really gets through to neurodiverse students, especially those with executive function issues. So, in summary, who has questions? Who has anything that they would like to say? Before we get to that, I just want to mention that Ascend Education is the organization that I make a lot of college courses that are being taught all over the world. And they want to offer you as instructors and professors and teachers the ability to get a free evaluation of those courses. And so you can go to ascendeducation.com and just click the book a demo link, and you can get someone to help you out, to walk you through it and get your free evaluation.